Today we're ready for our first fireside chat from two people you know all too well. First, we have Scott Kirsner, best known for his weekly innovation economy column and blog for the Boston Globe and Boston.com. He is also part of the founding team of 3 innovation conferences here in New England, including the Nantucket Conference held each June. Joining Scott will be Governor Deval Patrick. Governor Patrick was reelected to a second term as governor of Massachusetts this past November, and he views his service as governor as payback for all the opportunities the Commonwealth has given to him. As you may have heard in the news, Governor Patrick has recently proposed a comprehensive, dedicated, and competitive budget for fiscal year 2014. This includes $1 billion in annual investment for the Commonwealth's transportation system and $550 million in investment in education, to include providing universal access to high-quality early education, fully funding K through 12 education and allow for extended days for high-need schools, making college more affordable and accessible for our high school graduates, and allowing our community colleges to expand their efforts to provide students with the knowledge and skill training needed to succeed in today's workplace. Governor Patrick is a graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Law School and is the first in his family to attend college. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to bring to the stage Scott Kirsner and Governor Deval Patrick.
Thanks, Steve. Nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Morning.
So, Governor Patrick, I'm a journalist. I don't often get briefing papers before I have to speak to some. Well, my question for you is, are you supposed to read these before the event?
Yeah, that's the custom. I mean, but you're an original guy and an innovator. Good morning, everybody. Nice to be with you.
I guess the first question I should ask that was on everyone's minds this morning as we were gulping down our coffee is, the news of the week is the big gulp policy in New York has been struck down. As I was listening to that on the radio this morning, I was thinking, like, how much government time in New York City is being spent on the size of soda that you're allowed to sell? And then I heard this week that it doesn't even apply to coffee. You know, Starbucks can still sell the tanker truck size you do know latte.
What state I'm governor of, right? Are we going to spend time on New York, or are we going to talk about Massachusetts?
I was just teeing it up for you. I thought maybe I thought that maybe that was a softball question about what they're doing down in New York. I guess the first question I want to ask you, and I really haven't paid too much attention to what Heather and Tom so kindly sent me yesterday, is just tell us, where does the tech sector fit, you know, in your mental map of like how Massachusetts is doing and the various industries? I mean, we're here amidst Manulife and Fidelity in this part of the city, but Massachusetts, I was just looking this up, which I don't think I've looked up since 8th grade. You know, 6.5 million people in Massachusetts, about 180,000 of them at the, you know, in the most optimistic count, work in the tech sector.
Right.
So just where does this fit in your mental map of, you know, is this industry in good shape? How much time does it get from you? How do you think about what you and Secretary Bielecki need to do, you know, with this industry or for the industry?
So a couple things I'd say there. First of all, we have had, I think as everyone knows, a very focused strategy in job growth around education, innovation, and infrastructure. Education, because it's our calling card around the world. It's what we're best known for. We invest time and money and ideas into education from pre-K right up through higher ed, and we've been #1 in the nation in student achievement each of the last 5 or 6 years, not by accident, and first or second in the world in math and science. So then if you take education as the first pillar, and think of that as our natural resource, as important to us as oil is to Texas or corn is to Iowa. There are a handful of industries that depend on that kind of concentration of brain power, and the tech sector is one. Now, when I talk about the innovation sectors, and you write about this, but in my head, we're talking about life sciences and biotech, we're talking about clean and alternative energy, we're talking about financial services, which is more and more a tech business, and digital technology. Now, there's a tech in each of those titles, if you will, or sector descriptions. So I think this is a critically important area of focus for us economically, and it's one of the reasons why we are growing jobs faster than most other states, and we've come out. I don't know if any of you caught last week the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that we have regained all of the jobs we lost during the recession, and that's a.
It wasn't the Boston Globe hiring all those people, I don't think.
No, I understand. Neither was it state government, but the and you know, let's be clear, we haven't gained back every one of the jobs, but in numbers, we've gained those jobs back, and we have still some distance to go. But our growth opportunity and our growth reality has been in the tech sector, so we need to pay attention to how we cultivate that. And there's some things I think that this sector and these sectors, if I may say it that way, need, and that's a well-prepared and well-educated workforce. That's one thing government, I think, has to do.
All right, so I think that segues nicely into this this new plan. I forget what the correct term is for it, Tom.
It's in there if you had read it.
It's not a. I'm not supposed to say it. It's not an income tax increase. It's an investment plan, your economic plan for the future. So let's talk about that, because that is very much about education and infrastructure.
It is, right. So it's a growth strategy, and yes, there are taxes involved. Tax is not a four-letter word. We are talking about $1 billion for infrastructure, for transportation infrastructure. 80% of that is to pay the bills we've inherited and take care of what we have right now. You know, the cars on the red line are 40 years old, and it shows. On the orange line, 30 years old. We have parts of the Commonwealth whose economic opportunities have been locked up because they don't have access to transportation. So there are a handful of expansion projects that speak to that. It's very much a growth strategy, and there's a lot of enthusiasm and support for those kinds of investments from lots and lots of quarters, regular people, business people, everybody in between. And then about $900 million for education, which is divided, as Steve was saying in the introduction, between early education and care, where we have 33,000 kids on the wait list right now for quality early ed. Extended learning time in areas where poverty is concentrated, because that's another strategy we know works. A college affordability. And then how we get the community colleges to to play a more robust role in workforce development.
Back to the transportation issue. I mean, are we talking mostly about upgrading the infrastructure that exists here in Boston and out into the suburbs, or is there anything new in there? I mean, I didn't see anything about we're not going to have the bullet train from South Station to Amherst or something.
Not yet.
It doesn't seem like there's anything that would sort of qualify as a major new
well, there are a couple things. I mean, I always describe infrastructure as the unglamorous work of governing, but it supports everything else. So we can have a fast train to Western Massachusetts, but we're going to have to invest in the road bed, in the track bed to do it, and there's a piece in there for precisely that. The so-called inland route, if any of you have ever heard that described, which is a different way to get to New York than going down the 95 corridor on the train. There's a train connecting Boston to the 4th and 5th largest cities in the Commonwealth, Fall River and New Bedford, so-called South Coast Rail program. There's the extension of the Green Line, which is the legal obligation that my predecessor made, and a good project, but he didn't provide for a way to pay for it. We need to pay for it. And there are a couple, out in Western Massachusetts, for example, the economic orientation runs much more north-south than east-west. It's access to New York and up to Vermont to some extent that matters more, so we've got some money in there for that. But 80%, as I say, of this transportation investment is for what we have right now. And today, if you trip a wire at Park Street, it shuts down the red line all the way to Alewife because it's old and
We've all experienced that.
And we need to fix that, and we're not going to be able to fix it by reform alone.
And do you think that education investments are something that would be felt by pretty much everyone in the Commonwealth who has kids, whether they're in kindergarten or high school or going into college?
Yes. I mean, personally, I believe that the public dollar spent in education is the single best buck that we collectively spend in the interest of our own better future. And but it is also, it runs right up against a prevailing bad habit in government and frankly I think in business, which is to think and focus on the short term. I mean, one of the things I noticed in my business career was all this pressure to govern for the next quarter. And sometimes to do that, sacrificing the long-term interests of the enterprise. And I ran because I saw that same behavior had crept into the way we govern. You know, we govern for the next news cycle, the next election cycle. We're not governing for the next generation. And education, I think we have to think of as a next generation kind of thing. Yes, we have to concentrate on STEM education right now and workforce readiness for people who are out of work or been displaced by the recession, incredibly important. And we have some ideas that we have worked on over the years with many of you to help us do that. But many of these investments are about how we assure we're ready in the medium and long term.
And what's the thinking behind, I mean, I think everyone focused on, you know, particularly now that we're heading toward tax time, and everyone focused on, okay, you're talking about a 1% increase in the state income tax, but then there's what, 1.5% or 2% decrease?
Right. Almost 2%, right.
Almost 2%
in the
decrease in the sales tax.
Right.
So what's the thinking about how those two things balance each other out, just in terms of the way people around the state kind of feel that bite?
So just on that, in case people don't know, I have proposed to reduce the sales tax from 6.25% to 4.5%, which is lower, I think, than it's ever been, and to increase the income tax by a percentage point to 6.25%, to double the exemptions and then eliminate a bunch of deductions and exemptions. The net effect of that is that if you make $62,000 or less, your total taxes either stay the same or go down. If you make $62,000 or more, they go up, your total taxes, as a percentage of income again, depending on your ability to pay. By order of magnitude, if you make about $100,000, your total taxes go up somewhere between $300 and $400, which is not nothing. Mm-hmm. That's meaningful. Yeah. But it gets a little more progressivity into the tax system than we have right now. It also means that we land in total taxes in a very competitive place. We are now 1 or 2 or 3 positions behind the national average. We'd be about 1 or 2 positions above the national average, as distinct from some of the other solutions that I have proposed and others have proposed, like the gas tax.
And does it affect, I mean, if I'm a startup company or I'm a big company like a Raytheon or an EMC, does it affect corporate tax rates at all?
No, it doesn't. We cut the corporate tax 3 years ago, I think, 4 years ago, on a 3-year glide path down from, I think it was 9.5% to 8%.
All right. We have, I want to just ask a couple more questions, and then we have maybe 4 or 5 people sort of pre-selected, not really to ask questions, but kind of to suggest ideas that this tech community is thinking about.
Did they actually read their briefs, or did they, are they winging it as well?
Yeah, they may be winging it as well. But in terms of this, you know, when I think about the tech ecosystem and the workforce in Massachusetts, I agree with you that education is a great investment. One of the other issues that this community talks about a lot is the visa issue. And, you know, so someone's just gotten their PhD in computer science or chemical, chemical engineering, biological engineering from a school, and, you know, I think the rule is they have basically 30 to 60 days to stay in the country, and then it's basically go back where you came from, unless you have an employer that's sponsoring you. So I don't know if there's anything that state government, that may be entirely a federal issue, but how do you think about what we in the innovation economy should be doing to move the needle on the immigration debate nationally, which often seems to be a debate about, oh, these, you know...
people sneaking across the border from Mexico, and we can be blunt here. You know, we have a very, very broken immigration system, which I think there's a general consensus that is so for different reasons, depending on where you start on that. From our perspective, the what's it, HB1, H1B? What's the
H1B?
H1B visas. I remember Senator Kennedy used to tell me that you know, he took it upon himself to try to gather together a larger quotient of these than we normally got every year. But you know, there's no way to run a railroad. There's got to be a little bit more predictability in it. And you know, personally, I'm fascinated by what's been happening in the global economy. How much more globalized capital is than labor. And I don't think we've quite gotten our head around that. The free flow of talent, I think, is also going to be critical for the kind of economy we're becoming, particularly where our strengths lie here in Massachusetts. So, to the question about what people can do, there are a couple of really good ideas floating on a bipartisan basis in the Congress and with the support of the White House now on comprehensive immigration reform. You got to get in touch with our delegation and with the leadership of the committees that are taking this up, and do it as a group, but do it also as companies and individuals, because frankly they count the numbers of communications, not just the the quality or the substance of it.
That's how it gets tallied.
Right.
The other question, which someone mentioned to me yesterday, is just about branding. And I feel like a lot of times we're talking to each other inside Massachusetts and saying, oh, it's so great, we're innovative, we have all these startups, we have all these growth companies on the trajectory to an IPO. But tell us just what you do, when you travel outside of Massachusetts. What are the messages, if you had, 2 or 3 messages that you feel like you're constantly saying about the Massachusetts economy and who we are and what we do? Yeah. What are you saying today? And are there ways that this community can also help broadcast maybe outside of Massachusetts borders, so people don't sort of constantly say, oh, Silicon Valley equals innovation, Massachusetts equals, the place where my kids go to college?
Yeah. How many of you do business outside of Massachusetts? Okay, so check me on this. When I travel within the United States and beyond, and Tom, you've been on 1 or 2 of our trade missions now, so you can check me on this as well. The pitch I make is about about our concentration of brain power, and the connections we're making are with those complementary innovation sectors in the places where we go. In fact, that's why we choose the places that we travel to. And they're not all, the usual suspects. I mean, Israel, you got to go to Israel, right? Because it's a machine around producing innovative ideas, and they don't have markets in the same way we do. So it's a natural for us. But I was in Colombia last month for 3 days, and they have a burgeoning innovation sector as well, and they want friends in this part of the world. Brazil is another example. So I talk about what's happening in the tech space. I talk about our startup culture. I talk about the entrepreneurialism. We're #1 on, I think, 2 studies in the nation in entrepreneurialism. Mass Challenge is a big draw. It's the largest startup accelerator, I think, in the world right now, and we have met their counterparts and brought them to see and build those kinds of collaborations locally as well. So I think we have a story to tell. Now, I will say, due respect to the Globe and other media outlets, the media here is awful to the business community. It's just awful. Look, I mean, it's the only thing that seems to get reported is bad news. When somebody hits one out of the park, it's hard for anybody to get any attention. Now that's very, very different. I'm sorry, Scott. I didn't mean to put you on the.
I think we can debate that. Yeah.
Well, but I think it's different in other parts of the country. People make a thing of it when somebody succeeds in the business community, and that breeds a buzz. So I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that, but it's what It
wasn't in my briefing paper that you were going to rag on.
You don't know what's
Where
in
does
here.
it say? No, I don't know what's in here, actually. So let's go, rather than debating that point, but I do agree that cheerleading can be a good thing in terms of, I feel like we have done a fair amount of celebrating the demand wares and the constant contacts and the zip cars when they go public, the kayaks when they go public. But I do kind of feel like the thing we haven't solved is, what is the message we're sending outside? And I agree that some of the responsibility is the business community when they travel, talking about, what Massachusetts is and what we do here.